Lush riparian areas such as Spring Creek Ranch are rare in Arizona. They are also decreasing. The ranch is private property and will be developed. This is a film so that neighbors and scientists can explain why it is so special. They will also discuss how it could be developed in a way that is mutually beneficial to the habitat and the owners. We hope you enjoy this film and share it with your friends and neighbors to encourage awareness of how our region grows.
We love Spring Creek from the first. You know, we chose to live where we do because of the creek.
Spring Creek is groundwater come to the surface. Most often groundwater is out of sight, out of mind, but at Spring Creek, groundwater from the Red Wall Aquifer comes to the surface and flows for 4 miles down to Oak Creek, and it supports a very diverse and live riparian area. When native cover is removed and parking lots, roads, and rooftops are built, especially at a high or medium density, this causes a large increase in rainfall, stormwater runoff, which causes erosion and changes creeks and streams with bank erosion and incision of gullies and smothering of spawning gravels by fine sediments. I believe that any high or medium density development in this watershed next to such a sensitive system will irreparably damage Spring Creek.
There is a multi-room Pueblo site that is located on the private lands, and there are also rock art sites as well as open sites with artifactual associations. I believe that one of the biggest issues would be the direct and indirect impacts of such a development as this. Direct impacts are going to be to the archaeological features themselves, but more than that, it's going to extend indirectly into the public lands, forest lands. So I think to put several thousand people within a close proximity to such a fragile ecosystem would represent probably the worst siting of a property and a development like this. I think the one thing we all need to keep in mind is that cultural resources are non-renewable. You have renewable resources such as water, plants, animals, but you have non-renewable. Once an archaeological site is gone or the context of that site is destroyed, it's gone forever.
My name is Janie Ajugush. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Coconino National Forest on the Red Rock Ranger District. Back in 2015, a partnership between the Bureau of Reclamation, Game and Fish, and Forest Service, we constructed this fish barrier, which allowed us to manage native fish only above the fish barrier. The barrier prevents non-native fish from moving upstream and contaminating the native fisheries. And so we have some endangered fish species in Spring Creek that are really unique. So Spring Creek is really important because not only because of the diversity of aquatic species that we have and terrestrial species we have, it's also just purely because it's riparian. You know, there are so many species that depend on riparian systems for some part of their life cycle. 80% of all wildlife in the Southwest depend on riparian. The water provides all kinds of habitat for different aquatic and terrestrial species, but more importantly, riparian areas function as a filter so as we get flood flows, the riparian areas filter out sediments and contaminants before that water reaches the groundwater table, which is the water we get from our wells.
But you need to work with your community. It needs to be part of a community involvement.
I think this little area right here is park-like, and maybe this they could work with a conservancy group or something and protect it and keep it natural.
Hi, I'm Kim Shonick with the Nature Conservancy in Arizona. I'm our Verde River Program Manager. I've worked for the Conservancy here in the Verde for over a decade, and through that time I've seen this community grow and change. And I think as we look towards the future, we have to answer how are we going to continue to grow and change? How are we going to meet the needs of our communities and the people that live here and depend on the river for recreation, for enjoyment, but also for drinking water? where does it make sense to have shared facilities around wastewater management, and how do we encourage those developments to coordinate with each other and coordinate with the towns or other jurisdictions that they're in to develop shared utilities to reduce costs. So that's one other consideration we need to kind of keep thinking about. How does this fit into the big context, and how do we create regional solutions that benefit the river but also address our housing concerns? We also didn't have enough base flow in the river. Base flow in the river is impacted by climate change and groundwater pumping in the future. And so when we think about developments, that's really looking at where do those two things intersect. And so as we think about developments, we think it's really important that we do low impact developments that minimize outdoor water use. How do we encourage native landscaping and promote that sort of low water use? And then we think about planned area developments. So how do we have developments where the effluent that's produced can be captured and reused? So if you have wastewater treatment facilities, you can actually capture that and use it for recharge and reuse. And so that can benefit the base flow in the future too.
Another alternative possibly would be to entertain a land exchange with the Coconino National Forest and to trade the private lands here for forest lands that have much less resources conflicts, and that way would be able to block that up with the forest lands. I think that from the long-term perspective would help conserve all the resources here.
From the Nature Conservancy's perspective, we really encourage the community leaders to look at the available data and the available science and really understand what does that mean for the creek and for the river and for the community here.
So the Forest Service and other agencies like Fish and Wildlife Service, Arizona Game and Fish Department, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, we all would like to work with landowners on the best way to manage their lands, for them to manage their lands so that there's less impact to the ecosystem and ultimately down into our riparian areas.